Today we are talking about a sneaky habit many of us have, giving advice. I mean, you are a team leader, right? You've got experience. You've solved problems before. It makes sense that when someone on your team is stuck, you want to help them. You want to jump in with your wisdom, save them some time, and show you're there to support them. But here's the problem, that advice that you think is helpful, it might actually be getting in the way for your team to grow and engage. And in episode 2 of this podcast, I explain the toxic charity leadership trap and how to escape from that, which is what happens when we become the problem solvers for others. But today, I'm going to explain why advice doesn't work. Because I truly believe that unless you understand why something is not working, it is very difficult to change it. Welcome to the Leadership in Progress podcast, where we discuss all the things we are still figuring out at work, as leaders, and as humans. Each episode is packed with stories, tips, and real talk to help you build your leadership muscle for better connections, better results, and more meaningful workplaces. If you're listening to this, I'm guessing you're someone who likes to constantly learn and grow, someone who cares about their career and also their personal development, someone who likes to influence and someone who likes to inspire. And I will do my best to add more value to your journey. Let me tell you a story of one of my clients, and I want you to imagine that as if you were participating in that story, okay? A team member walks into your office and they look frustrated. They say something like, I'm not sure how to deal with this client. They keep changing their mind and I can't get anything finalized. And before they even finish their sentence, you get into the solving mode. Because you want to help them, you start asking questions like, did you try this? Or did you try the other thing? Your team member says, I've tried everything. I don't know what else to do. And then you find yourself in that difficult position, not knowing where to go next. Does this sound familiar? So you jump into a solution, an advice. Let's call it an intervention. You say something like, what I will do is X, or what you should do is X. Right there, in that moment, what you think you're doing is helping. Because you offer a fix, right? Or you elaborate why your advice worked for you in the past. And when you do that, it probably feels good to you. You think you have helped, and you expect them to look relieved as well. After all, they took what they came to receive, right? A solution to their problem. But instead, they don't look happy. They look puzzled. They nod. They say, thanks. But their energy drops. They walk out and they are less motivated. And then you start questioning their competences to deal with challenges like that. Sounds familiar? Because what really happened there? I need you to remember that as a rule of thumb. When we hear a solution, our default is to find all the reasons that the advice we received cannot work for us. Because advice, even when it's well-intentioned, can feel like a conversation dead end, you know? Advice can also look like a shortcut around empathy. It can be a way of avoiding the real work, listening, understanding, and helping someone come up with their own answers. But let's unpack that and understand fully why advice doesn't work for people. So I'm going to share with you 3 reasons why advice doesn't work for people. And the reason number 1 is that we solve the problem we assume the other person has. Reason number 2 is that awareness comes before solution. And I will explain that in a few minutes. Reason number 3 is that even when advice works in the short term, it doesn't really work in the long term because it doesn't empower people in the long run, finding their own solutions, and it doesn't create ownership and engagement. Let's unpack them one by one and explain them. So the first reason why advice doesn't work is because we solve the problem we assume the other person has. In my coaching sessions with leaders, I found out that more often than not, when people bring a challenge, this is not the real problem they have. So, for example, let me give you an example here. They might come with a question, how can I give feedback in a respectful way? Okay? If we take this for granted, we might fall into the trap of the transactional conversation. And that will look like finding solutions only in the surface of the problem. But if we explore more, if we slow down to speed up, this is where magic happens. Because maybe we find out that they don't actually have a problem with giving feedback. But right now, they need to make a hard decision to let someone from their team go. And they have never done that before. You see how everything is different? So they don't know how to talk about this. They don't know how to deal with this, how to make that difficult conversation. It is a completely different game, a completely different approach. And when you find out what the real problem is, there is bigger chance that you will be able to help that person solve their problem. Now, the second reason why advice doesn't work is because awareness comes before solution. As Albert Einstein said, you cannot solve a problem with the same awareness level that you had when the problem was created. What does that even mean? Let me make an analogy here for you. Remember when you went to school at the first grade and you did some math equations? Okay, then you moved into the second grade and the math equations became more advanced. When you gain more experience and more knowledge, you are able to solve more difficult problems. Now, to make this story even more related to our topic, imagine that you are in the fourth grade and a kid from the first grade comes to you with a problem. And they say, please help me. And you say to them, this is a piece of cake. Here is the solution. You know the solution. It's easy for you. But for them, not really. Because they don't have the same level of understanding. They don't have the same level of awareness that requires to solve this math problem. Most probably, they will feel disempowered and they will ask you, the expert, every single time they have problems like that. You see how is this related with your issue and the topic we are discussing today? You cannot help someone find a solution unless they see what you see. If you see more and you give them ready-made solutions, then you become the expert. And when you become the expert, they start depending on you to get the answers. And it might be nice, to feel like an expert, but it's not sustainable. And that takes us to the next reason why advice doesn't work. And the third reason why advice doesn't work, it is because exactly it creates dependencies. The more you are perceived as a hero and a rescuer, the more victims you create in your team. It is our human nature. Our behavior is driven by the pain and pleasure rule. We tend to avoid what we consider as painful, and we move towards pleasure. So when we have a problem, we look for the fastest and the more convenient way to solve it. You see how everything is connected right now? When you give the answers, you make it convenient for them. You are the easy way out. They don't need to think. They don't have to find a solution. You are there for them, creating a safety net every single time. And you create what we call the toxic charity leadership trap. And if you haven't listened that episode about the toxic charity leadership trap yet, go ahead and do it. This is the episode number 2 on the Leadership in Progress podcast. Now, I need you to think in terms of ownership. What is happening in terms of ownership? When you give ready-made solutions to people, usually they do one of these 2 options, right? Option number 1 is not to go through the advice because they don't like it, or because they don't believe in it, or because they don't feel confident enough to do what you suggested. And option number 2 is that they actually follow your advice. So you might think, okay, what is wrong with that? Even if they apply your advice, they have two options again. Either they will succeed or they will fail. And if they succeed, the desired outcome, they will see you as their hero and they will come to you again and again and again for help. Because remember, you are the expert. If they don't succeed on the other side, they will either feel disappointed or they feel angry and they put the blame on you. And you know what is less likely to feel? Ownership and responsibility. Because it wasn't their thinking, it wasn't their decision to make in the first place. It was your idea, it was your advice, and they followed what you said. So I'm asking you, what are the chances that constant advice can lead to positive outcomes? You might be thinking, but I want to help, right? And yeah, I get it. Helping feels good, but helping through advice often means taking away their responsibility and their opportunity to grow. Advice makes us feel smart and needed, but it doesn't always serve the other person as well. Okay, so now you might be thinking, okay, if advice isn't the answer, then what is? What shall I do? And let's get even more practical. Here are 3 changes you can make as a team leader if you want to empower your people and move from being the problem solver to creating problem solvers. The number 1 change is ask before you answer. Instead of jumping in with your idea, ask, what have you tried so far? Or what do you think is going on? What is the real challenge here? What options you're considering? You see, those questions, they show respect. They allow the other person to have the ownership you need. And those questions, they open up space for people to think and reflect. And when you ask those questions, you need to pause. You need to listen and let them talk. And listen carefully. Sometimes just by saying it out loud, it helps them find their own answer. Episode 3 of this podcast is all about how the best leaders speak with intention, listen with presence, and create real influence by holding space, not the spotlight for people. So go ahead and listen that if you haven't do it yet. Change number 2, coach, don't correct. Become a coach leader. The second or the third time someone comes to you with the same problem. After the first time you give some answers to the person and you did solve the specific problem for your team, start coaching them to find the answers instead of repeating the same answers. Release judgment and your need for control the outcome and meet them where they are in terms of understanding and in terms of thinking. Ask them, what did you do last time? Or maybe what similar situation we had in the past and how we solved them. Finally, empower ownership and action. Always end with a question that drives action. You can ask questions like, what will you do next? Or how can I support you without taking over? Or maybe, what might be a challenge if you do this? Help them think through their plan, verbalize possible obstacles, predict solutions, and put into order the chaos they have for the unknown. So help them put their plan into order. Let me tell you another story. There is a team lead I work with. Let's call her Emmy, okay? Emmy used to hand out answers like a candy. Her intentions were good. She genuinely wanted to help. Emmy was a kind, caring leader and always tried to be supportive for her team. But despite all that, she was exhausted. Every decision was coming back to her office. She felt like she was carrying all the weight of the team in her shoulders because everyone was dependent on her to move forward. Responsibility, motivation, ownership of the project, it all sat on her shoulders. Emmy was a high achiever by nature, and she worked really, really hard to inspire others into action. But the harder she tried, the more dependent her team became. It was like her team stopped thinking by themselves, you know. And in her meetings, Emmy would start with a well-structured agenda. She led the conversation, celebrated the milestones. All this sounds right, isn't it? She was so enthusiastic, but she didn't realize that her speed was much, much higher than her teammates. By the time she asked the team for their thoughts, she was already 10 steps ahead of them. So we made one small but powerful shift. Instead of acting like the manager with all the answers, Amy stepped into the role of the facilitator. She started asking curiosity-driven questions, handing the lead to others, and acting more like a maestro in the orchestra and not a player. At first, it was very awkward for her. It felt unfamiliar, uncomfortable. She couldn't hold back. But within a few weeks, what happened is that her team started to step in. They started to make suggestions. They stopped bringing only problems. And Amy, she started taking her time back, her energy back, and most importantly, she got her team back, So here is what I want you to remember. Advice often feels helpful, but most of the times it's not. And it can actually backfire. It can make your team feel small. It can create passive followers instead of active contributors. But with just a few simple shifts, asking instead of answering, coaching instead of correcting and judging, you can lead in a way that builds trust, confidence, and capability. Next time someone on your team comes to you with a challenge, try this. Pause. Stay curious. Slow down. Don't rush. Ask some more questions. Listen to understand with an open mind. Help the person clear their thinking and then ask more questions to come up with the next steps. Thanks for tuning in to the Leadership in Progress podcast. You're here because you care about growing your impact and your leadership, and I appreciate that in you. If you found this episode useful, go ahead and share it with someone that you care and respect. Oh, and leave me a comment with your thoughts. I want you to know that I will personally read and reply to that. And until the next one, take care of yourself and remember that, like everything, leadership is a work in progress.